This is an AI-generated podcast based on the article The Promise That Changed Everything: How Jannine Prokop Found Peace in Obedience, written by April. The article link is in the show notes. Jannine, thanks so much for joining me today. I have to say, your story, it's remarkable. You had this 20-plus year career in semiconductor manufacturing, you're the primary breadwinner, and then suddenly you're laid off. By every practical measure, that should have been terrifying. But you said you experienced more peace than you'd ever known. How is that even possible?
It really shouldn't make sense, right? I mean, we had a 15-year-old at home, a foster daughter in our care, and my husband's work had been, well, inconsistent. But here's what happened. I'd been feeling this nudge from God for years. Finish the book. And I kept pushing it aside. When the layoff came, I started job hunting, interviewed with a company I really admired, and lost the job. Then one morning in prayer, I heard God so clearly, "You are not going to work for 6 to 7 months until this book is done. So don't even worry about looking for jobs." Wow, that takes incredible faith. So all the job search stress just evaporated completely. And get this, my husband, whose work had been sporadic for years, suddenly landed several major projects. The bills were covered. I was free to obey. But here's the turning point, April. I'd always thought God asked me to write this book, and I'd been disobedient. A couple weeks ago, I was praying, and he goes, "That was a promise, not a command." The promise was, you will write a book, and from that book, the blessings will flow for others as well as for you.
That's powerful. A promise, not a command. Can you unpack that a little bit? What shifted for you when you understood that distinction?
Everything shifted. This wasn't about my failure to follow through anymore. It was about God keeping His word. He had been present in every experience I needed to write this book. The divorce, the anxiety, the difficult coworkers, even the unexpected blessings. He was gathering the material long before I understood the assignment.
You mentioned divorce there, and I know this is personal, but I think there's a really important lesson here about listening to God when picking a partner. Can you talk about that first marriage?
Yeah, that's a hard one, but it's important. I knew I wasn't supposed to marry my first husband. I knew it, but I did it anyway. And you pay for that disobedience, right? I've been reading the Bible in these large chunks, and I keep seeing this pattern: women trying to force outcomes instead of trusting God's timing. Eve and the apple, Rebecca manipulating Jacob's blessing, Sarah giving Abraham her servant, which led to centuries of conflict. Every single story, I now start to see the theme. If they had just let God do it His way, none of this would have happened.
That's such a profound observation. So when you ignored that knowing about your first husband, what happened?
I created my own mess. I forced an outcome because I thought I knew better, or maybe I was just scared to wait. But God, He redeems. Even that painful season became part of the material for this book, part of what I can now share with young women who are facing similar decisions.
That's beautiful. So let's talk about the daily practice, because I think people hear stories like yours and think, okay, but what does Monday morning actually look like? How do you stay grounded in this faith?
So here's what happened. Since January, I start every morning the same way: prayer, Bible reading, and a walk with my dogs. I keep a daily gratitude journal. 3 things I'm thankful for. During my walk, I pray and listen. I try to listen to what do you want me to write? What are you trying to teach me out of the Bible today? I read the entire Bible in 90 days, then started again on a 6-month plan. Reading it in those large chunks gave me something I'd never experienced in verse-by-verse study: the full arc of God's patience, frustration, and relentless love.
That's interesting because, we're often told to study verse by verse, really dig deep. But you're saying reading the whole narrative changed your perspective?
Absolutely. Like, Jesus is really irritated with these disciples. Like, you idiots. That's how I felt with people. And the same thing with the Old Testament. I'm like, man, if I was God, I'd be so frustrated. These people just don't get it. But seeing it all together, you see God's faithfulness, even when we're not faithful. Does that make sense?
It does. And I love that you brought project management skills into foster care, of all things. Tell me about that decision, because fostering preteens and teens, that's not easy work.
That's a great question. I think, when my two oldest children left for college, my 15-year-old son was lonely. I had felt called to foster care for years, specifically to preteens and teens, but I'd resisted out of fear. What if something went wrong? What if my young children were traumatized? With the older kids gone, the timing was finally right. On a daily basis, to me, that's my Christian thing every day. How do you help these children? All the children we've received have been long-term cases with no progress, no IEPs, no family reunification plans. So I brought my project management skills. Why are you not finding a family member? Why can't you approve this person? How do we get them reunified? So you're literally using your business skills for kingdom work that nobody sees. That's the integration we talk about on this show. Now, I have to ask about the tithing story because that $10,000 timing is remarkable. Oh my gosh, right? So, years earlier, we attended a church that emphasized relationship with God over religious ritual. The pastor gave a call to tithe. At the time, we weren't tithing. I'd been praying this simple, persistent prayer: God, if I just had $10,000, I could pay this stuff off. We decided to try tithing. The very next weekend, Jannine's mom gifted her $10,000. I'm like, you kidding me, right? Exactly what I asked for. But I didn't tithe to get that $10,000. I'd just always been saying that. From there on, I'm like, there's no way I'm not tithing. And you've seen God's faithfulness continue through this layoff season, too, with your husband's work picking up exactly when you needed it. What would you say to someone listening who's in that scary in-between place right now? I'd say God's promises are not commands to perform. They are invitations to trust. I know this is from God because I'm not even hardly a reader. This is not like a desire I've ever had. I know it's from God because I would have never come up with this on my own. And when I started freaking out about the writing, God said, look, it's my book and I will not write a sucky book. So stop worrying about it. Your job is to get the raw content out. He will send the right people at the right time.
I love that. It's his book. He's not going to let it be terrible. Jannine, this has been so encouraging. What's the one thing you want people to take away from your story?
I think eternal life is actually love and peace and experiencing that. If I experience that now, I'm experiencing what eternal life is like. I'm in God's love and I'm having his peace. That's what eternal life is. So whatever promise God has spoken over your life, stop treating it like a task. It's not about your ability to execute. It's about his faithfulness to provide.
Beautiful. Jannine Prokop, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us. For those listening, all the details and a link to the full article are in the show notes. Until next time, keep seeking the kingdom in your work.